Have you ever felt like no matter how close you get to an INFJ, there's still a part of them that feels untouchable, almost like their mind is operating on a level you can't quite access? That's not your imagination. INFJs carry entire inner worlds that very few people ever get to see. Their thoughts run deeper, their emotions hit harder, and their insights stretch far beyond the surface. But here's the truth. Even if you love them, even if you think you know them better than anyone else, there will always be layers you'll never fully understand. In this video, we're uncovering 10 signs that prove you'll never truly figure out what's going on inside an INFJ's mind. By the end, you'll either feel validated for your own INFJ experience, or you'll realize why that INFJ in your life feels like such a mystery. Stick around, because this one will open your eyes. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Brainy and turn on notifications so you don't miss more deep dives into INFJ psychology and hidden personality insights. Their intuition works on a different level. And when you interact with an INFJ, it can feel like they know things about you before you've even said a word. That's because their intuition isn't just about gut feelings. It's a finely tuned radar that picks up on subtle cues most people miss. The way you pause before answering, the hesitation in your tone, the glance you don't think they notice. An INFJ processes all of it instantly. While others might take what's in front of them at face value, an INFJ is busy connecting dots, weaving together patterns of behavior, and noticing contradictions between what you say and what you feel. This ability can be both unsettling and fascinating to others. You might feel like they can read your mind, when in reality, they're simply reading your energy with extraordinary accuracy. And because they process things so deeply, they often come to conclusions long before anyone else has even realized there's something to figure out. That's why many people feel both intrigued and exposed around INFJs. They don't need you to confess your secrets. They can often sense them. But here's the catch. This depth of perception is nearly impossible to explain to someone who doesn't experience the world this way. You could ask an INFJ, "How did you know?" and their answer would sound vague, because to them, it's less about a single clue and more about an entire web of observations. This is why you'll never truly understand the mechanics of their intuition. It's not logical in the traditional sense, but it's rarely wrong. Their emotions run deep beneath the surface. With an INFJ, what you see on the outside is rarely the full story. They can appear calm, composed, and collected, but underneath, their emotions run with a depth that most people will never fully comprehend. When something impacts them, whether it's joy, sadness, or betrayal, it doesn't just brush across their surface, it sinks into the core of who they are. That's why they often remember details others forget, and why certain experiences leave marks that last for years. Here's what makes this even harder to understand. INFJs don't always show you this depth. They've learned early on that most people can't handle it, or worse, dismiss it. So instead of expressing everything they feel, they hold it close, processing it internally and sharing only with the rare few they trust completely. To others, this can make them seem mysterious or even emotionally distant, when in reality, their inner world is overflowing. This emotional depth is also what makes INFJs so empathetic. They don't just sympathize with your struggles, they feel them almost as if they were their own. But this same sensitivity can become overwhelming, which is why they need time alone to recharge. From the outside, it may look like withdrawal, but for an INFJ, it's survival. And here's the paradox. While their emotions are one of their greatest strengths, they're also one of the biggest reasons people will never fully get them. Because unless you live with that level of intensity yourself, you can't possibly know what it's like to carry so much feeling inside while presenting a calm, controlled face to the world. They see patterns you don't notice. One of the most defining traits of an INFJ's mind is the ability to notice patterns where others only see random details. You might recall a conversation and forget it the next day, but an INFJ will remember not only the words spoken, but also the subtle shifts in tone, the pauses between sentences, and the unspoken tension that hung in the air. To them, nothing is ever just small talk. Every detail becomes part of a bigger puzzle, and they're constantly piecing it together in the background. This is why INFJs often predict outcomes before they happen. They'll sense that a relationship is about to end, that a person's smile is masking a deeper pain, or that a seemingly harmless decision will lead to conflict down the road. To outsiders, it may seem like intuition or even guesswork, but for INFJs, it's the result of countless tiny observations stacking up into a clear picture. Here's the part that makes them difficult to understand. They rarely explain this process out loud. When an INFJ says, "I just know," it's not because they can't back it up, it's because trying to break down all the micro signals they've noticed would sound exhausting or even unbelievable to others. And so they keep their insights to themselves, quietly watching events unfold exactly as they predicted. This ability to see patterns is both a gift and a burden. It allows them to protect themselves and the people they care about, but it also means they can't turn off their awareness. Even in casual settings, their mind is reading between the lines, catching truths others aren't ready to see. And that's one of the reasons why most people will never truly understand the depth of an INFJ's mind, because it operates on a wavelength that doesn't make sense unless you live it. They experience emotions on multiple levels at once. When most people feel something, they feel it in the moment and then move on. With an INFJ, emotions are rarely that simple. You don't just feel sadness. You feel your own sadness, the sadness of the person you're comforting, and even the weight of past emotions that resurface in that moment. It's as if your mind runs several emotional channels simultaneously, processing layer upon layer of meaning that others don't even register. This makes INFJs incredibly empathetic, but it also makes them difficult to understand. Someone might assume you're overreacting to a situation when, in reality, you're carrying the unspoken tension of the room, the memory of a similar wound from years ago, and your own internal reaction, all at once. Most people can't see this invisible depth, so they underestimate just how heavy things feel for you. Because you experience emotions on multiple levels, you also process them differently. Instead of simply reacting, you analyze what they mean, how they connect to the bigger picture, and what they reveal about the people involved. For others, anger might just be anger, but for you, it's a clue. Why did this trigger them? What past wound are they hiding? What does this say about who they really are? The downside is that this depth can feel isolating. You often carry truths and feelings others aren't ready to face, and explaining them only makes you sound intense or too much. That's why INFJs often hold back, quietly shouldering emotional realities others don't see. To outsiders, it looks like you're calm and collected, but inside your mind is a vast emotional landscape where every layer matters. And that's why most people will never truly grasp the inner world of an INFJ, because while they're walking on the surface, you're already 10 layers deep. They see the future hidden in the present. One of the most mysterious parts of an INFJ's mind is how naturally you connect the dots between the present and what's yet to come. While others focus only on what's right in front of them, you're already tracing the invisible patterns underneath. Patterns that point toward where things are heading. This ability isn't about fortune telling. It's about noticing the subtle signals most people overlook. A shift in tone during a conversation, a hesitation in someone's story, a repeated behavior that others dismiss as nothing. To you, these tiny details are like puzzle pieces, and your intuition stitches them together into a bigger picture. The result? You often sense outcomes long before they happen. This foresight can be both a gift and a burden. On one hand, it gives you a powerful ability to protect yourself and others. You avoid toxic situations before they explode. You warn friends about patterns that could hurt them, and you prepare for changes that would catch most people off guard. But on the other hand, it can be isolating, because when you speak about what's coming, people might dismiss you as paranoid or too intense. Only later, when things unfold exactly as you predicted, do they realize you were right all along. What makes this so difficult for others to grasp is that you don't always have logical proof to back it up. Your insights come from a blend of intuition, emotional depth, and subconscious observation. You just know. And while others demand an explanation, you can't always put your knowing into words. They would need to think on your wavelength to truly understand. This is why INFJs often feel like they're living slightly ahead of everyone else. You see where the road leads while others are still distracted by the scenery. It's a lonely kind of clarity, but it's also what makes your inner world so rare and so misunderstood. Their inner world is too complex to translate. One of the biggest reasons you'll never truly understand an INFJ's mind is because the way you process the world doesn't operate on the same channels they use. For an INFJ, thoughts aren't just logical steps. They're layered webs of intuition, emotion, symbolism, and meaning. When you ask them to explain what's going on inside, it's like asking someone to condense an entire novel into one sentence. You might see them pause mid-thought, struggle to put feelings into words, or say things like, "I just know," without being able to show you the step-by-step logic. That's because what happens inside their mind isn't linear. It's more like a spiral of insights, flashes of intuition, and emotional undertones weaving together all at once. To someone who thinks in straight lines, this feels impossible to grasp. What makes it even more mysterious is that INFJs often choose not to share the depth of what they're thinking. They've learned from experience that when they reveal too much, people either misunderstand, dismiss, or twist their words. So instead of trying to explain, they keep most of their inner world private, offering only surface-level glimpses. This adds to the feeling that they're guarded, distant, or hard to read, when in reality, they're simply protecting a world too fragile and too layered for casual conversations. The irony is that INFJs often long to be understood, but they've accepted that only a handful of people in their entire life will even come close, and for most, they'll always remain a mystery, someone whose thoughts run deeper than the language available to express them. They keep emotional distance even when they care. One of the most confusing traits about INFJs is how they can deeply care about you, yet still hold back parts of themselves. To an outside observer, this looks like contradiction. How can someone show empathy, kindness, and understanding, yet still feel out of reach? But for an INFJ, this emotional distance isn't about indifference, it's about survival. INFJs know that when they give too much of themselves, they risk being drained, misunderstood, or even manipulated. They've likely been through experiences where opening up too much only led to disappointment. So now, even with people they trust, there's always a quiet reserve, a piece of themselves they don't hand over. This is why many people describe INFJs as warm and compassionate, but also hard to fully get close to. This hidden layer isn't a game, it's a boundary. INFJs can listen to your secrets, carry your pain, and even make you feel seen like nobody else can. But when it comes to their own vulnerability, they're far more cautious. They may reveal fragments of their inner world, but the deeper truths, those are carefully guarded, shared only with rare individuals who've proven they won't misuse that trust. This balance, carrying deeply while keeping emotional distance, creates the sense of mystery that surrounds INFJs. People feel connected to them, yet also intrigued by what still remains unspoken. And that's part of why you'll never fully understand an INFJ's mind, because no matter how close you get, there will always be parts they keep only for themselves. They guard their inner world like a fortress. The final reason you'll never truly understand an INFJ's mind is because their inner world is not meant for public access. It's sacred ground. To most people, an INFJ seems open, even vulnerable, because they listen so well, empathize deeply, and connect with sincerity. But the truth is, the most important parts of their thoughts, dreams, and fears remain carefully locked away. It's not about secrecy, it's about protection. INFJs know the value of their inner world. It's where they retreat to process emotions, to recharge, and to connect with their deepest insights. Letting someone in recklessly would risk misunderstanding, betrayal, or misuse of their most personal truths. So while you might feel like you know them, the reality is that you've only seen the surface of what they choose to reveal. Even in their closest relationships, there's a quiet reserve, an untouched depth that remains just there. This doesn't mean INFJs are cold or incapable of intimacy. In fact, it's the opposite. Because they guard their mind so carefully, what they do share with you carries incredible weight and meaning. If an INFJ opens up, it's because you've earned a rare place of trust in their life. But even then, you'll never reach the very core of who they are. That place is theirs alone, and it's where they keep the wisdom, visions, and intuitions that guide their path. And this is what makes INFJs endlessly fascinating. No matter how much time you spend with them, no matter how close you get, there will always be an air of mystery, a reminder that some parts of them can't be reached, only respected. Their intuition is beyond explanation. Perhaps the most baffling trait of an INFJ is their intuition. It's not logical in the way most people understand, yet it's eerily accurate. They can read between the lines, sense tension before it surfaces, and predict how a situation will unfold long before others even notice a shift. To outsiders, this feels almost supernatural, like they're reading minds, but to an INFJ, it's simply the way their brain processes patterns, emotions, and subtle signals. This intuition makes them difficult to fully understand because they operate on insights that they themselves can't always explain. You might ask an INFJ, "How did you know that?" And they'll just say, "I just knew." That answer frustrates people who rely on logic alone. But the truth is, INFJs absorb 1,000 little details others miss, and their subconscious connects those pieces into a picture that feels undeniable. What complicates this further is that INFJs rarely flaunt this ability. They keep their insights quiet unless absolutely necessary because they know others might not believe them, or worse, dismiss them. So while you're still trying to figure out someone's motives or where a situation is heading, the INFJ has already mapped it out. They've seen through the mask, predicted the fallout, and made their move, all without needing to justify it. This uncanny intuition creates distance between them and the rest of the world, because while others struggle to catch up, the INFJ has already moved on, trusting what their inner compass told them all along. And it's this quiet knowing, this invisible edge, that makes their mind nearly impossible to fully understand. Their detachment is final, not temporary. One of the most misunderstood parts of the INFJ mind is how they detach once they've reached their limit. For most people, pulling back from a relationship or situation is a temporary act, something done in anger, stress, or confusion that can later be resolved. But for an INFJ, detachment is rarely a spur-of-the-moment reaction. It's the result of deep reflection, countless mornings ignored, and emotional boundaries being crossed too many times. By the time they walk away, their decision is already final. And what makes this so hard to understand is that INFJs don't usually explain themselves when they detach. They won't create drama, argue their case, or give you a list of reasons. Instead, they go silent. To outsiders, this silence feels cold or even cruel, but in reality, it's an act of self-preservation. They've given all they could, tried to forgive, and tried to heal, but once the well runs dry, there is nothing left to give. This is why people often mistake INFJs for being unpredictable or too sensitive. The truth is, INFJs are incredibly patient, sometimes to their own detriment. But once that quiet patience reaches its breaking point, detachment isn't about punishment, it's about survival. They don't look back because they've already carried the weight of the relationship long before it ended. And it's this quiet, irreversible detachment that makes an INFJ so difficult to truly understand. Most people can't comprehend how someone who once cared so deeply can switch off entirely. But that's the paradox of the INFJ mind. When they stop caring, it's not sudden, it's the result of years of carrying more than anyone realized. And this is why so many people never truly understand INFJs. On the surface, it looks like they walked away suddenly, as if they flipped a switch. But if you've been cut off by an INFJ, what you're really seeing is the quiet result of months, sometimes years, of unspoken patience, forgiveness, and disappointment. By the time they stop caring, the choice has already been made long before you even noticed the distance. If you've ever felt that mystery around an INFJ in your life, or you are one yourself, you know the truth. Their silence is not anger, it's clarity. And once that clarity comes, they never look back. If this gave you insight into the INFJ mind, make sure you subscribe and come back for more, because the more you understand INFJs, the more you'll realize just how rare and how unforgettable they truly are.